Alright, so this often comes up, how to flip a character. Like if you only have half a character, or if a character is not the same on both sides. So first thing you want to do is delete half the character. You can do this a couple different ways if you have two halves. One is go to Faces, and you can double click, and hopefully it goes around your guy all the way around. And you can see mine does. So I could click on one, hold Shift, double click on the next face, and it will grab a ring. Then I could just double click on this side, and that, and then I could delete half. Now, if you can't do that, or if it doesn't look quite right, that's the quicker, easier way. The other way of doing it is to switch to an orthographic view here. Let me turn off my waffle. And click and drag, and basically make sure you're in face mode. Click and drag the marquee select here, and get half. Be careful not to get over half. You know what I mean? Like, don't accidentally get too much. Make sure that you're only getting half. Alright, now if I do get too much, like let's say like this, if I hold control, see how my cursor turns into a minus symbol? I can hold control and I can remove stuff. Now let's say I need to only add. If I hold control and shift, because shift is that's toggle select. So you'll see when I click and drag, see how it unselected these two but added these two? If I want to only add, I hold control and shift, and that will only add no matter how many times I click across. So I'm set control. Okay, so make sure that you only have half gone, and then hit delete. Alright, good. Now I got half a guy. Now let's say I want to flip this dude and or dudette. Now again, you can do this. This is a quicker way. So go to edges, right click, drag up to edge, double click, and it should go all the way around. And actually, look at, I did a bad job. So I gotta go to faces, and then I gotta remove this little bit here on my filtrum. Alright, let's try this again. So go to edges. Come on, edges. There we go. Double click, and it should go all the way around. Alright, now you might want to switch to this view here, and maybe even hit 4, so you can see the wireframe to make sure that it doesn't go into any of this here. Okay, and you just want to make sure it's going all the way around. Now, if you're not sure that that worked, the other thing to do is, again, while you're in this view, is just go to Vertex, and just do it by Vertex Selection. So I'm just going to hold Shift, Control and Shift, so I only add. Control and Shift I'm holding down. And I'm just going to kind of click and drag and go all the way down the center here. Like so. Control and Shift. Okay. So I have all my center ones. Alright? And just double check that it looks good. Now, it might look good, you might be fine, but if I go to flip this, if any of these are slightly off, then what will happen is it won't flip right. So if you look, see how this is not flat? That means it's not perfectly flat, this half of the body, right? So you just might be off by more, or off by less. But if you look, you can definitely tell that this is not flat. So because of that, what we want to do is you're going to hit R, which is scale, okay? And we want to scale to the perpendicular axis. In this case, it's X. It's this one. So I'm going to click and just go. You can, if you look up here, you can see that vertex is moving. And I'm just going to make sure it's nice and flat. Okay? Great. So just do that a couple times. Just keep pulling it to the center, just that one axis. Alright, so now that line is flat, and that's good. And you can do the same thing even if you're in edges. You can do it this way if your edges were clean and it looked good. But if not, you can do it that way. Alright. Next thing to do is this. Your character should be on origin. Okay? So origin is this line here. Alright, it's like the thicker, darker, that's 0. Alright, on the grid. So if I have my little waffle on here, I want that to be my center line. So your character might be off, it might not be off, I don't know. I'm just going to go ahead and move mine over a little, just so you can tell. Okay, so let's say mine's off. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to hold D, which moves my pivot, and I'm going to hold V, which is point snap. Alright, and I'm going to drag it to the right, and then I'm going to drag it back, and make sure that I basically am trying to point snap it to, like, these vertices. So now you'll see that's right on the center. So now that I've got my center point of, if I were to scale this guy when I go to flip him there, see how that's better? Because if it's off, I'm just going to hold D and move it over a little so you can see. You'll see that when I go to flip it, see how it's going to cut into itself? Like if I duplicate it and then flip it, see how that doesn't work? So you want to make sure that D and V, that you point snap it to that center. So that when I go to flip it, that's the pivot, okay? Which is all great and dandy, but I also want to make sure this is also on center. So while I have this on with the move tool, I'm going to hold X, which is grid snap, right? So X is grid snap, C is curve snap, we haven't really had to use that one, and V is point snap. So I'm going to use X for grid snap, and I'm just going to pull it and pull it back. So now it's on origin, all right, while I hold X. Good. Now what I'm going to do is, we can do this a couple different ways, but might as well set up the duplicate special, because why not? So while I have it selected, make sure you're in object mode. We're going to go to Edit, Duplicate Special, Option Box. Go ahead and hit Edit, Reset Settings. Okay? Just so we start off with nothing. We're going to choose an instance, because what will happen is if we change one side, it'll automatically change the other. This I don't really care about. We don't want to change translate or rotate, but scale, that we want to change. And if you look, you'll see it's 1, 1, 1. So if there's 3 values, that means that this is X, Y, Z. And we want to change our value for X because we're going to flip it on X. So I'm taking my scale and do -1, and I'll hit Duplicate Special. And you'll see it'll make a duplicate, and it will flip it on X. And if you look down here, you can see that one says -1 on X. And because it's an instance, when I change something here, it changes it on this one. Now, these are actually still two separate pieces of geometry. Well, technically, this is just an instance of this, but if you actually want to combine the two, select both, do Mesh Combine. So it's this button here, or you go to Mesh Combine. That'll make it one piece, but you will see, if I hit 3 to do the preview mode, they're not actually, the vertices are lined up with each other, but they're not merged. There's actually 2 vertices here. So if I go to, and grab, if I just click on one, you'll see they're not merged. So I got to merge all those vertices. So we could do this a bunch of different ways. I could click and drag and go around the outside, or honestly, grab the whole guy. Just right click, go to vertex mode, go over the whole dude. Alright, that looks good. And then I just need to merge it. So I can click on this here, or you go to Edit Mesh and Merge. Now this little threshold should pop up, and you'll see it says 0.01, which means it has to be within 0.01 of a grid amount. So my grid's kind of small, but generally speaking, do 0.001. That means it has to be within 100th. That should probably be good enough. Because what happens is if you make that too low, and I'll show you what happens. Watch if I make this 1, let's say. Anything that's within 1 grid size, so each one of these is a grid unit, it'll merge those. As you can see, especially on the face, this is going to happen. Around the mouth, that's worse than I expected. It's going to merge those because there's a lot of vertices right near each other. So you do not want to do that. So if I do 0.01, it gets a little bit better, but there's a chance that, darn it. A lot of times you'll see that the mouth will be like zipped right there, or some of the eye ones where it gets really tight where these are closer. But just do 0.0001. That way it has to be really close for them to merge. And then just hit enter. If that didn't come up, if like for some reason it's being dumb and not giving the option, just go to Edit Mesh, Merge, hit the option box, and just change the value here to 0.001 and then hit merge. Okay. And now if you look, you should see, if I hit 3, that we now have a 1-piece dude, and he's all good to go for the show. Alright? And you are good, so there you go.